Hello everyone, Phoenix Knight here. Welcome to the channel and welcome to Pinot with Phoenix for February 2026. It's been another great month on the channel with the 2001 season replay getting into the playoffs today. So let's recap everything that we did on the channel. First up, we'll start off with a brand new game on the channel as we played 4 Against Darkness by Ganesha Games. Evening, Dave. Glad you were able to stop by tonight. 4 Against Darkness is a D66 dungeon crawl where you roll your dice to generate basically your entire adventure. You generate your entrance, then you generate each room, then you select what's in the room. Now we took out a very generic party. I think we had what did we have? We had a paladin, I think. I'm trying to remember the characters that we had in there. We had a paladin, an elf, a wizard, and I'm trying to think. Oh, cleric. I know I had my 4 characters: Elwina, Solidia, Nyrissia, and Kira in there. I actually really enjoyed the adventure. This was mostly about pushing the pieces of the proverbial pieces around to get a feel for the system. We had a pretty good dive with it, and the system actually made a lot of sense. We didn't encounter a boss, and I wasn't planning to in this adventure. But I did enjoy the adventure. Like I said, this one was more about pushing the pieces around, helping me to get a feel for the system. So that's it for 4 Against Darkness. Now, let's talk about the 2001 season in Payoff Pitch Baseball. 2001 has been a season where baseball's been played. Let's tab over the monitor and see how everything's been going. And I will preface this by saying that the only word I can come up with for this season replay is drunk. Let's take a look at the standings. So first in the American League East, where the season finished, the Tampa Bay Devil Rays actually won the American League East with a record of 92-70, finishing 13 games ahead of the New York Yankees, who didn't make the playoffs and shockingly finished the season tied with Baltimore at a record of 79-83. Remember, you need to have a winning record to make the playoffs. So since the Yankees and the Orioles did not have a winning record, they didn't make the playoffs. In the American League Central, the Cleveland Indians won the division with a record of 107-55. Looking at the historic standings, which I've got right here, actually Cleveland won the division historically. And of all the teams in the American League Central, my bingo card when I started 2001 did not have the Detroit Tigers anywhere near the playoffs, but instead, the Tigers actually snuck in the last block of the season thanks to Ultra Quick Baseball. They made it in. They are actually the 4 seed. I almost forgot to add that in. But the Tigers' prize is the American League West champion Texas Rangers in the American League West, as they had a dominant replay. They won 119 games, which I think is even greater than the real life record. So yeah, the Texas Rangers definitely dominated the replay. Oakland similarly did not make the playoffs because they had a sub 500 record. Speaking of things I didn't have on my bingo card for this replay, moving into the National League East. The Montreal Expos winning the division didn't hit my radar screen when this replay started. But they won the replay with a record of 90 wins and 72 losses. But as you can see when they were on the board, they didn't win a single game, and in fact they only scored 4 runs on the board. So I don't like their chances in the division series round. The Florida Marlins also snuck into the playoffs with a record of 82 wins and 80 losses. If the Expos would have beaten the Marlins in the last block of the season on the board, then we wouldn't have had the wild card game that we had earlier today, but file that away for the time being. In the National League Central, the Milwaukee Brewers won that division with a record of 95-67. Houston finished 9 games back of them with 86-76, which was good for the 5 seed. The Pittsburgh Pirates came in at a record of 83-79. In case you're wondering why the Pirates didn't make the playoffs, it's because I also only take the top 2 teams in each division to make my bookkeeping a little bit easier. Even though, in theory, it's not that hard to track rankings. It's not that hard to track the league ranks. As you can see, I do it over here as well. Anyway, moving into the National League West, the Colorado Rockies were actually had the third best record in the majors, but their 104 wins will be good for the National League West title and the 1 seed. They will await the winner of the second National League wildcard game that we'll be playing tomorrow afternoon. The San Francisco Giants made the playoffs with the 4 seed with a record of 99-63. The Padres and the Dodgers were both also playoff eligible, but they were too far back. And the Arizona Diamondbacks actually made channel history in a bad way, where they became the first historical season champion to not make the replay, to not make the playoffs in the replay. So yeah, this was not a good replay for the Diamondbacks. Moving over to the brackets in the playoffs, we also played the first National League wildcard game earlier today between the Florida Marlins and the Houston Astros. The Astros won that wildcard game 6-2, so now at least on the channel, they're on their way to San Francisco to play the Giants in the wildcard game tomorrow afternoon. But you can see the rest of the brackets here. We've got the 2-seed Cleveland Indians against the 3-seed Tampa Bay Devil Rays. Their game 1 will be on Monday night. The Texas Rangers and the Detroit Tigers, their game 1 will be, their game 1 will be Thursday night. I've got to put the schedule together. Then for the Milwaukee Brewers and the Montreal Expos, their game 1 is actually going to be tomorrow afternoon, tomorrow evening, after the second National League wildcard game. The winner between the San Francisco Giants and the Houston Astros will then have to go to Colorado to play the Rockies in the division series. So yeah, 2001 did a lot of crazy things, to say the least. But that'll do it for my musings on Payoff Pitch. We'll be talking about that at least one more time. Next up, let's talk about a new game debut on the channel as we played Marvel United by Simon. This one has you playing as just like it sounds, the heroes in the Marvel Comics universe, taking on various villains, going around the board, trying to deal with threats, save civilians, deal with the thugs there. In the debut of this on the channel, we took out Black Widow and Captain Marvel versus Red Skull. Red Skull is the suggested first villain for this game. I actually ended up winning the game by the skin of my teeth, and I had a lot of fun with it. And if you've been following some of my unboxings, I've been very much going om nom nom with as much Marvel United as I can get a hold of. In fact, I really need to organize. I'm planning on doing some organizing with all of my Marvel United. I'm actually looking at that on my other table off shot. So there's a lot I'm going to need to do with that. But I do have that penciled in as part of a project coming up in the off season. But we'll talk a little bit more about that probably during March's Pinot with Phoenix, when we talk about what's coming in April. Anyway, next game we're going to talk about is another new-ish game debut on the channel, but I had a specific purpose behind revisiting this one. This was Bowl-O-Rama by Play Games. This is basically going out bowling when you don't want to be around a bowling alley and all of that good stuff. So the thing is, I really enjoy Bowl-O-Rama. I actually like the bowling aspect of it, but it didn't work for the purpose I had in mind. What I wanted to do with it was I wanted to use Bowl-O-Rama to help me determine opponents for the Christmas in Arkham and the Summer of Lovecraft. Because I don't like the idea of just pointing at an ancient one and say, yeah, I'm facing you during this. I'd rather let a game pick that and do it in a somewhat thematic way. So what I did with this one is I actually had ChatGPT generate me some Eldritch rules for it, essentially a passive effect and then an active effect that we would spend Mythos tokens to generate. So we'd actually generate the Mythos tokens passively, and then we would spend them on an active ability. Unfortunately, it ended up not working out because I wanted to be able to use an app to score everything, but it just wasn't going to work out. So, like I said, this is not a knock on the game. I really enjoy the game, but the purpose, it's not going to work for the purpose I had in mind. Anyway, that's enough rambling on Bowl-O-Rama. Next up, let's talk about Super Boss Monster by Brotherwise Games. This one is a dungeon building game where, if you're familiar with Boss Monster, this is marketed as a 16-bit version of the game. So you play a boss monster, and then you're trying to build your dungeon, luring heroes into it to basically have them go through a buzzsaw, essentially, in the dungeon. We actually did very well in this game, scoring 28 points on the game, which was good for Sultan of Dungeon, I think is the title for it. The game you might compare this to is something that is Stone Spine Architects by Thunderworks Games. I actually like Super Boss Monster a little bit better than Stone Spine Architects because, at least in my experience with Stone Spine Architects, you don't get the payoff out of the dungeon that you built. You essentially build the dungeon, you score it, and then you're done. You tear it up immediately, and you don't get to see what happens with it. Whereas with Super Boss Monster, when you build the dungeon out, actually the design of the game, like I mentioned, is, yeah, you bring the heroes through so you can see how well they... So basically you can see how many heroes you're able to run through in the dungeon. There are epic heroes as well, so if you really... So that's another way to give you a challenge. But you have to be careful in Super Boss Monster because you need to make sure you've got enough treasures. Excuse me. You need to make sure you have enough treasures to lure the heroes to your dungeon. There are thief treasures, wizard treasures, warrior treasures, and cleric treasures. I think actually it's thief. I think I mentioned that. So again, really enjoy the game. Next up, we have another new game debut on the channel that's going to be a part of a new project along with Marvel United in the off-season, but again, more on that during March's episode of Pinot with Phoenix, as we played Marvel Zombies. Now, Marvel Zombies, if you've played Zombicide, this is basically the same game with a Marvel coat of paint on it. I had a history with Zombicide, and I think some of it was the theme, but others was just the sheer number of zombies that I was putting on the board and some of those spaces being a little bit too small for the number of enemies you're putting out. The thing with Marvel Zombies is there's actually two ways to play it. You can play as the heroes. You can basically play as the living heroes, trying to power up and probably defeat zombies. We actually played in zombie mode where we had 4 zombie heroes. We had Captain Marvel, Deadpool, because of course we were Cooking with Deadpool for Mystical Munchies. More on that in a minute. Wasp, and the Hulk. I actually did get through the scenario that we played, and I really enjoyed this one, and I think the theme is doing a bit more work in this one. I never was the biggest Marvel fan in the world, but I do want to start digging into some of the lore a little bit, especially with the X-Men, well, especially with Black Widow and Phoenix, at least, my two main ladies in Marvel, in the Marvel world. You have... Dave has Deceased, which is the DC Comics version of Zombicide. I have that one as well. And I also have DC United, which is the DC version of Marvel United. Looking forward to getting those out on the channel at some point as well. Those will probably make guest appearances during the off-season as well, but we'll have to stay tuned and see how that turns out. Last up, we had another new dungeon crawl on the channel as we played Creole Manor by All or Nothing. This was a darker dungeon crawl that actually had some Ark Nova vibes to it. You had your 3 actions. You have your sneak, fight, and influence, I think, or bribe. Essentially, the way you do that is you take an action depending on the strength of it, and you increase the strength by tilting the action. So you put a die on it, and that gives you an extra point. This actually reminds me a lot of the Ark Nova and Disney Villains action selection mechanic, where you select your action, and then it's stronger depending on what level you select it at. So in Ark Nova, if you take, say, animals at level 4, you'll get a stronger effect than if you would have used the same action at, say, level 2. There's a similar vibe here with Creole Manor, but in a dungeon crawl. And it gives me narrative aspects, and you've heard me stress narrative on the channel because I like those games that really let you tell a good narrative story to them. And I can definitely see a lot of... There's actually a bit of narrative in here, along with some of the choices that you're making. And I see a very fun game in this one, to the point where I'm actually penciling this one as my fall campaign. But let's see what I think when we get to August's episode of Pinot with Phoenix. So I'm way ahead of myself on that one. A little more variety on the games this month, so better on that end. Now let's talk about Mystical Munchies. As I mentioned for Mystical Munchies, we were cooking out of the Cooking with Deadpool cookbook for February. So let's talk about the recipes. First up, the appetizer, we made nacho average cheese sauce. This one ended up a little bit more I think this one ended up a lot more solid than it probably should have. And I think the problem there is that my microwave just isn't strong enough. So I'm probably going to, as I'm marking this one for a redo, I'm thinking I'm going to have to use the oven to heat this up, just to get it hot enough for mixing everything together. Next up was the side, the Boxing Day bread. This one I was happy with how it turned out. It's a very heavy bread, but like I said, happy with how it turned out. The entree was the breakfast chimney. I liked how the breakfast chimneys turned out, and I probably need to put down some butter in the pan to fry the chimneys because I ended up burning them black. So because I was using cooking spray in a nonstick pan. So next time I do this recipe, I'm probably going to put some butter down instead of using the nonstick spray, so I can see how that works for frying. Last up, we had the dessert for the double shot cupcake. I felt like the coffee flavor was actually a little bit overpowering in this one, and they were falling apart more than I was hoping they would. So I actually ended up junking these cupcakes. I wasn't going to be able to bring them into work with me just because, again, it's too overpowering. Anyway, that's it for Mystical Munchies. No questions for Ask Me Anything. As a reminder of how you get questions on for that, if you want to get a question on for Ask Me Anything, leave a comment in any video for the month with an AMA tag in it, and I will probably answer it. As long as it isn't too personal, I'll answer it. Now, what do I consider to be too personal? I don't really have a hard rule for it. Admittedly, it's completely my decision on what I answer, but the general guideline I give about Ask Me Anything is if you don't want it asked of you, don't ask it of me. So just, again, use a little common sense on that. Anyway, another segment on Pinot with Phoenix for this year is I actually did set... Oops, wrong monitor. I did set some goals for 2026. So I wanted to get all games played in the collection, and I'm working on that. I'm hoping the off season will help me pick up speed on that. Will help me pick it up a little bit on that. At least one Wednesday campaign I wanted to do on the channel. I've got a lot of small games that are suited for that. I do have a Wednesday campaign scheduled on the channel, but I'll talk more about that. Actually, I've got it scheduled in April right now, so we'll talk a little bit more about that during March's episode of Pinot with Phoenix. As for launching a wrestling federation in Face to the Mat Pro Wrestling, I actually abandoned that goal. I know how I want to launch it, and I'm already past the point of no return on how I wanted to launch that. As for the football question, I think that goal has been decided, but I'm going to decide it in a different way. What I'm deciding to do with that is I'm completely abandoning football in my replay library, and the reason I'm abandoning football in my replay library is because the logistics of scheduling it isn't going to work out. The thing is with football, it's actually easy to use the season weeks as a built-in schedule block. So what I was thinking of doing is, say, week 1, I'd play a game on Saturday, play a game on Monday, and then run ticker after Monday's game. The problem is if I have like a 16 or 17 week season, the regular season is going to take 4 months, which is going to eat into my off-season time very heavily. So, and it's going to last most of the way into that 4th month, to the point of potentially stretching into a 5th month. So I'm actually going to abort football as part of my replay library. As for my last goal of at most 40 new games into the collection and played, to be perfectly honest, I'm actually kind of making a little bit of a mess on that one. I've been ordering in a fair amount of stuff coming in, and I'm actually eyeing up at least one more game. Evening Lower Slower, all is well with me so far. We're just recapping everything that we talked about during the month of February, and actually are just in time for me to bring it back on center. Let's talk about what's coming in March. Of course, we are going to have the 2001 season play. We are going to have the 2001 playoffs in Payoff Pitch Baseball for my season replay. I expect the replay to actually stretch a little bit into April, but it's not going to stretch terribly, I don't think, before we finish. As for the scheduled videos, Sundays are going to start with a racing red, white, and blue racing, and I've got some special rules with that in mind. And you guys can probably guess as I'm talking about the special rules that they're going to be Lovecraftian rules. I had ChatGPT build up a set of Lovecraftian rules that I could use to give the race a little bit more theme, because like with Bolorama, I do want to try using red, white, and blue racing to help me select opponents for Christmas in Arkham and the Summer of Lovecraft. So the idea is I'd assign each driver an Ancient One that also has a passive ability and an active ability based on their patron. And then whoever's driver wins the race, that would be my opponent. So say a driver I've assigned to Cthulhu, for instance, wins the race. Well, in that case, Cthulhu then becomes the opponent for Christmas in Arkham or the Summer of Lovecraft. The reason I'm exploring Team Yuggoth. Sorry, Yuggoth is actually one of the worlds, but Yuggoth is not an ancient one. Anyway, the reason I'm experimenting is after Christmas in Arkham, when Jester went through the Fate of the Elder Gods tournament, he was talking about how it was taking a lot of time to get to the Ancient One, and I kind of agreed with him. The more I had a chance to sit with, the more that I had a chance to sit with that feedback and say, okay, yeah, it's actually taking quite a while to get to an opponent in Christmas in Arkham, and plus with Fate of the Elder Gods, which was my play-in game for Christmas in Arkham, I was having to do a lot of house ruling just to make some of the abilities work. And between that and the Summer of Lovecraft, I was getting a lot of the same Ancient Ones, where there were some Ancient Ones that actually cross all three games of Eldritch Horror, Arkham Horror 2nd Edition, and Elder Sign, but because they're not featured in Fate of the Elder Gods or Pandemic Reign of Cthulhu, which that's the game I used to select the Ancient One for the Summer of Lovecraft, I'm getting a lot of the same Ancient Ones, and in fact, once I realized we were going to get Shub-Niggurath for the second time, I was like, okay, yeah, that's enough of that. And actually, it kind of started when I got Yogg-Sothoth for twice in a row, for Christmas in Arkham 2024, and then the Summer of Lovecraft 2025. That's kind of where I started thinking, okay, that's where I really need a new way to do this. But I ran the tournament as it was, with Jester stopping by and helping out with that. But ultimately, we're going to look for a new way to determine the opponent for Christmas in Arkham and the Summer of Lovecraft. Red, White, and Blue Racing is the newest game to test that out. As for Sundays, we're also going to be playing Shadows of Kilfirth, which is a new game on the channel. Call of Cthulhu, that'll be the week that I'm at GaryCon down here, it's actually in Lake Geneva, which is about an hour away from me. So unlike with Gen Con when I went last year, I will actually get to sleep in my own bed for GaryCon, so I'm very much looking forward to that. And we're going to play Spirit Island on the month. Now, Spirit Island is an interesting one because I've got a little bit of a checkered history with Spirit Island. There's actually a local guy that I used to play games with that was really alpha gamey about Spirit Island, and I kind of soured on Spirit Island a little bit. But figuring as I've got everything for it, I'm like, you know what? I'm just going to pull it out, put it on the channel, and if I still bounce off of it, hey, I can either trade it off or try to sell it and move on from it. So we'll give that a try. Wednesdays, we're going to have mostly new games on the channel, as we're going to be playing Veil Wraith, which by All or Nothing Publications, which is also a new game. Sanctuary, which is basically, from what I've been seeing of it so far, it's basically a shorter version of Ark Nova. And we're going to play we also have Pandemic Fall of Rome before that. Sanctuary and Raiders of the Deep, which from what I'm seeing, essentially looks like World War I The Hunters. As for Mystical Munchies, March is going to take us aboard the Titanic as we cook out of Titanic, the official cookbook. We will be making fried calamari with pepper and tomato sauce, bean apple salad with honey dressing, beer-battered fish, and apple custard. Now let's wrap this video up. We're going to start in March with the Arkham Cup as we play Red, White, and Blue Racing by Play Games, and we'll have the second wildcard game in the National League for the 2001 playoffs in Payoff Pitch Baseball. That will take us to Pac Bell Park in San Francisco, California, where the Houston Astros, fresh off of beating the Florida Marlins earlier today, will be playing the San Francisco Giants. Roy Oswalt will be going for the Astros, and Russ Ortiz, I think, is the number one starter for the Giants. He'll be going for the Giants. Wednesday, we're debuting Veil Wraith by All or Nothing Publications. And Saturday, Mystical Munchies will start out of Titanic, the official cookbook, as we make fried calamari with pepper and tomato sauce. Thank you for watching the video. Please give the video a thumbs up and subscribe to the channel. Be sure to turn on notifications so you get my content. Be well, stay safe, take care of yourselves and your loved ones, and I'll be back with more videos in the future. Until then, take care, everyone.